unto us a blessing, he always seems to have a condition attached to it. And so he gives us this great blessing of agency and this great commandment to love him, to choose him as our Father. And the blessing given is for us as individuals, because we are all individuals, though a nation. In the beginning, it was easy, I guess, for people to just love God and not have conflicts among themselves, because it was just Adam and Eve. And I don't think there's any doubt that they loved God. But then along came Cain, and perhaps maybe a few considerations that had to be kept in mind, because now they have a third person to consider. Still, this loving little family had no great problems in getting along, fulfilling what God had willed for them. In a little while, Abel was born. And you know what happened in the world's first known family. The Bible gives a brief description of how it was that Satan entered into the life of Cain. And we see here that Cain did not seem to place great value on things like love and sacrifice. From Genesis 5:6-5:8, we read this, "And Cain loved Satan more than God. And Satan commanded him, saying, Make an offering unto the Lord. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstling of his flock, and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel, and to his offering, but unto Cain, and to his offering, he had no respect." You know, I'd always wondered, because I never really read far enough into it and understood it, why didn't God respect the offering of Cain? Well, now I reread it, and it's plain. Because he didn't love God. He didn't care about God. He was going through the motions of the sacrifice. There was nothing in his heart. Now, because of the way things happen, Scripture goes on to say, now Satan knew this. He knew what was going to happen. He knew this, and it pleased him. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. Now, isn't that just like people? Aren't people sometimes strange in their way of thinking about things and events and what takes place? Especially when Satan comes into the picture and stirs things up a bit. How when they do something, it's wrong, they know it's wrong, and they planned it, plotted it, but it doesn't work out in their favor. Isn't it strange how they usually find someone else to blame for it? Now, there's no doubt that Cain was not blaming himself. Cain was blaming Abel for his problems. And the Scripture certainly says they went in the field and talked. Well, I think that talk was really an argument. And that argument ended in the world's first murder. It is hard. It is very hard to, well, it's almost impossible to know the exact thoughts and motivations of another person. Have you ever had somebody ask you, why did she say that? Why did he do that? Well, I'm going to go and ask him because I don't know. It's really hard to understand why people do things sometimes. Perhaps Cain was thinking that with Satan's help, he would be totally independent and free of family ties. I mean, he was a pillar of the ground. He provided food for the family, no doubt. He wanted to be free, perhaps, of all this. Free of any family ties and free of any responsibility. There is an extremely important point that needs to be made here, and that is that within the creation, there is no such thing as absolute, total freedom. Remember, when God gave man his agency, he gave him also the commandment. Freedom that is not attached, that is not connected in or in any way or related to something or someone else, doesn't exist. Only God alone, only God himself has total freedom. God created all things. God created all the elements from which he created the earth, and he prescribed the function of those elements. We then begin seeing how that we were created physically from the elements of the earth. And we are dependent on those elements in order to exist. We need the air that God created to breathe. We need the water to drink. We need all those things that God created. Yes, God created man and gave him freedom. But it is freedom within certain boundaries. And yet amazing, those boundaries in no way interfere, or have they ever interfered, with the exercise of his agency. Man always has had and always will have the right to choose. Now, I have heard people say, you know, I gave my heart and soul to the Lord, and I don't have the right to choose. That's very generous of you. God said, no, thank you. Because if God said, okay, you don't have the right to choose, I'll take that agency back. Who's to blame for any sin you commit after that? Since he took your agency away. Ain't gonna happen, brother. Ain't gonna happen, sister. It don't happen. God gave that agency, and it's yours. Like it or not, it's a great blessing, and it's yours. He commanded us. He told us what we should choose. But he did give us the choice, nonetheless. Our agency, our freedom to choose, has never been touched. While the world we live in is not as it was in the days following its creation, the principles that govern our thinking and the actions are the same. As I said before, except for the technology that exists, man himself has not changed since his creation. So what has changed? Aside from technology, maybe the fashions, the way we dress. Is it our music, the songs that we listen to, the way we sing? Could it be the foods we eat, or eating to be healthy, or eating to be trendy? And finally, what we watch, the movies, the TVs, and the things we read. Are those things changes that have taken place in us or in our lifestyle? Or are they, as some suggested, a reflection of those changes? You know, the accusations have been flying back and forth that Hollywood reflects the changes in our lifestyle. And Hollywood says, no, we are showing changes in your lifestyle. That's the kind of pictures we're making, what's going on. You don't get it from us, we get it from you. And back and forth. A change in our values not only can, but very well might be something that will change everything about us. So it's not the way we dress, it's not what we eat, it's not what we sing, or the way we sing it. It's what takes place in our value system. So many times when we hear the word freedom, we think most naturally of our political freedom, our freedom as Americans. We think of our right to move about the country as we please, and maybe 100 or more things that we can do as we wish. I wonder how many people are aware of how simple it would be for us to lose all that. How this could change, maybe sooner than we think. Or perhaps it won't be sudden changes. But the kind of changes that happen can happen. Sometimes things slip into our life without us noticing it. And sometimes we don't think we can do anything about it. Now, I don't expect any changes like that to happen suddenly. I don't expect an invasion from a hostile power or the sudden collapse of our economic system. The kind of danger we face is that kind that, as I said, sneaks in unnoticed by all but the most sensitive, the most spiritually sensitive people. And I think spiritually sensitive is key. You know, last week we talked, or last week or week before, we talked in our adult Sunday school class about changes that have taken place over the years. The way nowadays there's a very rampant use of drugs for recreational purposes that now really threaten the availability of those same drugs for people that really need them. And today we face what's called an active shooter problem. That only appeared in Hollywood movies, and now there's a copycat crime of that nature almost on a weekly basis. We have background checks, and that's a good thing, but it hasn't lowered crime. Every day there's bullying and teacher abuse in schools, where it's off limits to read the Bible or to pray. God gave us our freedom, but it is conditional. When our earthly father gives us an order and we disobey, he's usually pretty quick in handing out some kind of punishment unless we get it back into line. The temptations of the world are many. And sometimes to enjoy those temptations, we must put a little hold on our moral convictions. Let little things be acceptable or tolerated. And then those tolerations become an acceptance. And that acceptance becomes a way of life change. And we stray away from that pure love of God, the love of our fellow men, start seeking things for ourselves, and that kind of freedom that he offered us, we're going to lose. To stand against those things that would ask us to go against our moral beliefs, we must sometimes perform a sacrifice. We give up some of our earthly pleasure. Perhaps say no to a friend. Many years ago, before I joined in the ministry, I used to have a lifestyle that was very worldly. I was among many who enjoyed drinking, making a lot of noise. I was determined, live life, live, love, and be happy. Making a lot of noise, do a lot of drinking, and make a lot of noise. I had only one rule. And don't ask me where it came from. Well, I think you'll know where it came from, but I had one rule. Don't hurt anybody along the way or lead them to follow your lifestyle. One day, I learned that a certain young man who had been friends with was beginning to pick up my bad habits. I was really hurt. Really hurt. In a way I'm not sure I understood at the time, but I was really hurt by it. Because now there was something I had no way to undo. I had no way to undo something I never intended to do. Sometime later, I decided to try to bring my life in better order. And I felt that in order to do that, I had to ask the Lord for help. And I knew that one of the things I had to do was I had to give up that drinking. Now, I used to party a lot with someone that I was close to. In fact, this was one of my brothers. Not the brother that's living with me now, but another brother. And we used to party a lot. And I made the decision to give up drinking, and I related that decision to another friend who I just also happened to be pretty close to. And when I made my decision known to that person, it was kind of strange, because they didn't beg, but they kind of asked me to not give it up. Don't give it up. And I thought, well, why not? Because he wouldn't have anybody to party with. But I had a decision I had to make. And it had to be made in order that I might be better to serve what I believe serves the Lord. What's all that got to do with freedom, with love and sacrifice? The Lord gave us freedom in the day that He created us. And day by day, and deed by deed, so many surrender that freedom to Satan. Every time we give him a little bit, we give up that freedom to serve him purely as we should. It's not political freedom that's given up. is freedom of the Spirit. Jesus told us that when the Son makes us free, we are truly free. Now, governments can restrict us. They can take away all our material possessions that we might acquire over the years, but they can't touch the freedom that God has given us. He's given us so long ago, if we are but willing to sacrifice, to love, and choose Him as our Father. There was a story, again, part of a movie that I saw, about a man. I don't know if I shared that story with some of you before, that this fellow had been taken prisoner by a Roman general, and the general ordered that this man become his servant. And he told the man that if you serve me, do as I wish, things will go well for you. Well, the man served the general for a long time. And then one day, as the general was about to retire, he turned to the man and he said, "You've served me well over these years. I've made arrangements for you to have your total freedom. You are no longer my servant, no longer my slave. You're free." The man looked at the general, just kind of smiled. He said, "Thank you, General. I appreciate that. But I've always been a free man." You see, God gave us a freedom that nobody can take from us. No nation, no person, no people. We got to surrender it. As long as the surrender is to be ours. I pray that God will continue to bless this nation, bless us people, and He will if we continue to love Him, exercise our agency, and choose Him as our Father. May God bless us all.
Let's stand for the closing hymn, number 397. May stand for victory. your agency to be that of a loving child, pure and innocent. Your freedom to be your sacrifice. Love, faith, and hope go with you. Love thy neighbor. Pray continually that the Spirit will guide you and be with you. Amen.